Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to all of you joining us for this next episode of Critical Thinking Live, Friends of Europe's serving of leaders, influencers, decision makers who make an impact on our lives in terms of policy making and decisions. And that's why we bring you in this Critical Thinking Live series, individuals who are exploring a number of issues in our lives in Europe. And today we're going to speak about space. This is part of our Making Space Matter program. And my name is Dharmendra Kanani, Chief Spokesman, and it's a great pleasure to welcome Eric Morel, who is Director of a number of things at the European Space Agency, but in particular, he's involved in legal and international matters, in particular at the European Space Agency. A very warm welcome to you, Eric. Thank you for joining us here today.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you very much. So there's been a lot of discussion around space, increasingly so in political and public affairs in the past, especially 3 to 4 years. We've seen a significant increase in the competition between the East, the West, in terms of, launching satellites up into space. And there's, a veritable space race taking place here and now. You've just had your very first summit at the European Space Agency last week. Can you share with us some of the priorities that were discussed last week, Eric?
It was, for me, a very important event. In the morning, you had an informal meeting of the Competitiveness Council of the European Union. And in the afternoon, there was a Council of ESA at ministerial level. In between the two, we had the pleasure to have the President of the French Republic, Mr. Macron, that came in Toulouse to deliver a very visionary speech about space. So this was a unique occasion to have all the actors at the same place, being it in the frame of the European Union, being in the frame of the European Space Agency. You know that we don't have the same membership exactly. We were all there together, like in a way the Team Europe, if you want to call it like that. So what were the subjects that were discussed? In the morning, during the Competitiveness Council under French presidency, the two subjects were mainly discussed. The first one is the new regulation proposed by Commissioner Breton on secure connectivity. Mm-hmm. And the second one was a communication also of the Commission, also of Commissioner Breton, about space traffic management. So this was discussed during the morning session. In the afternoon, during the ESA Council, there were two main subjects on the table. Is what we are calling in ESA the accelerators, and where we think that considering the threat that Europe is confronted with, we should really accelerate the use of space to serve our citizens. And the second subject was what we are calling the inspirators. This is a word we have invented. It is not Oxford English, but I think it is very understandable by all of us. What we would like is to come with projects that are really inspiring the young generation and also offering opportunities and benefit for Europe. And there are two main points that were discussed. The first one is human exploration, low orbit, Moon, Mars, and the other one was the idea of a scientific mission that would bring back a sample from one of the icy moons around Saturn. So those are two fascinating missions that were discussed during the afternoon.
So Eric, tell us, so that's kind of a very interesting agenda in a number of levels. And those who aren't conversant with some of the terms, it might be helpful to just explain what what were the kind of conclusions, what were the outcomes of this, as you say, a very significant summit. You had Macron there during the presidency giving a visionary speech. I mean, give us a bit of a highlight in terms of bit about what his vision was, but more importantly, and I don't mean that in any disrespectful way, what were the kind of agreements or outcomes from the summit?
So I think when you look at the member states that are present there in the morning, I would say that the regulation and the communication of the Commission have been quite welcome. Of course, in both cases, this is the start of a process that the Commissioner is initiating. And this process, of course, will follow a number of steps. But I would say this was really underlined by all the member states around the table. Those two proposals have been really welcome. For the secure connectivity proposal, I think it is important for ESA because we intend to collaborate with the Union on this proposal, and we are preparing in that respect a program to be submitted to our coming ministerial meeting at the end of the year in order to support the development and validation phase of this secure connectivity. So you see, also there was something at stake for ESA. In the afternoon, two points that I would like to underline. The first one, this idea of accelerators on three main topics. One is called Green Future. This is about climate change. The other one is resilient crisis response. This is about the natural crisis created by the climate change. And the third one is called Protect, in order to protect our assets in Europe. You see immediately the link with the subject that we discussed in the morning, this communication space traffic management and the initiative of ESA. And I would say the need, the importance, the notion, the need to accelerate the use of space was really, I think, supported by ministers in the afternoon of the 22 member states of ESA. Concerning human exploration, what has been agreed is to create a high-level group that will start working and conduct a certain number of hearings and come with recommendations and with options to be submitted to ministers. And I think that this for me is really important because it is a domain very important for the future of Europe, and to have first a debate and then the decision being taken, I think, is something of great interest for all Europeans.
So, Eric, I mean, so this notion of a high-level group, can you tell us? I mean, what is it? It is because some people will say it's just another group of people that are going to chat and not do much. Why is this different? Why is this so important to have a high-level working group of people? Who are they?
So why is it important? I think the worst would have been a decision taken by default. Very simple. You don't speak about it. And at the end, the decision is taken to continue what we are doing today. So that would be the worst. And really, I think it is important that we will really put on the table of ministers a set of options, and then they will have to decide, but to decide in full openness about how they see the future of Europe in terms of human exploration. So there are a lot of things to be discussed. Cooperation versus autonomy, robotic versus human, the low orbit versus the moon or Mars. So there are a lot of subjects to be discussed. Then you say, why high-level group? Because in order to initiate a debate on solid basis, I think it is good to ask a certain number of well-recognized persons in Europe to think all together, to think about a set of options, and then really to present in full independence a certain number of proposals with options. And it will be up then to the politicians, to the governments on that basis to take their decision. But to have a group that will analyze that in an independent way, I think is very important, because it will create in Europe a momentum, and with a set of of information. On the top, a number of hearings will be conducted, and we hope that they will be able to be conducted in public. So that will also help our citizens to better understand what is at stake.
So in a way, sorry to cut across you, in a way you're cutting out the politics of it. So to create some sort of independent airing of issues that can be trusted. This doesn't come from any kind of partisan member state. This is a group of experts and others, I hope, who are not experts, to take the politics and the heat out and the acrimony, but to actually give, let's say, a thoroughly stressed out set of options for how we do a number of things in terms of exploration or robotics, green transition, etc. Is that a fair summary?
I think the role of the of policy, the role of the government, of the ministers, is really to take the decision. But when you have to take a decision, you must have on your table clear options, with options, consequences. Also, the cost not to do something is really important. So I think it is, for me, extremely important that we are putting on the table of the ministers, first, a good view on the situation, those options, the consequences, financial, industrial, in terms of economical growth. I think it is extremely important to do that. And I think we are there under a clear separation of roles. I mean, high-level advisors, experts have to, in an independent way, prepare the decision. But the decision is a political decision. It will not be a technical decision.
Indeed, Eric, thank you. And thank you for responding to the challenge. But it sounds, and I think that what people who are watching and listening to this will be, I suppose, been heartened by, is that you're going to have a citizen dimension to this in terms of citizen engagement. And I have some questions from our citizens panel a little bit later for you. But let's move on to the green transition. There's a lot of conversation about how the capitalization of space will help the green transition. Can you explain to us how that's the case?
Well, it is. We all see the climate change, and we all see the very important and brave decision taken by in Europe to have a carbon neutral Europe. I think this is for me something very important. I would take only a few examples. Think about renewable energy. Mm-hmm. Where is the best place to put the windmills? Where is the best place to put the photovoltaic panels? How to do it in the best way? For that, you need space, because space will tell you very fast. Will give you the map of all the winds, and will help you to define where to put in a more efficient way the means you need to go for renewable energy. So that is a very obvious case. Take another one. You have a certain number of industries, like a cement industry or chemical industry, that are consuming a lot of energy. They are asked to reduce the energy they are using, to become more greener. But how to measure that? How to measure the efforts that they are making? Space is fantastic for that. You can measure and give and distribute in a way the good and the bad points, and recognize the efforts that they are making. You can take a third example: development of our cities. Space, of course, is giving you a view that you will never get from the Earth, and this is helping you to build the cities of the future. So that's what I'm saying. That is one of the key messages with the accelerators. We are convinced that space can do more than what it's doing today. And since the threat, like the climate change, are today far more important than it was 20 years ago, today you really feel it. I think it is extremely important to accelerate the use of space, to procure to the European citizens the maximum benefit that space can offer. And this is the idea that we are really pushing with the accelerators, and I think that this is really important. We are going, I think, in the right direction.
So Eric, tell me, so this sounds, that was really clear, very helpful. It occurs to me that the vast majority of citizens don't really understand the potential, the capacity, and the importance of space to their livelihoods. Now, I'm not going to say to you that, how's the European Space Station is going to turn that around, because it's not necessarily your role. But there is something about how the Parliament, the Commission, others really engage to make sure that people understand what space is and why space should matter to them in their everyday lives. So in terms of moving to the changes as an institution, as a part of your agenda 2025, you want to become more agile, responsive, and so forth. Where are you with that? What's the timeline for that, and what do we expect from the future of ESA?
I will give you two very concrete examples of the very recent past. We are all being confronted with the COVID. You imagine the impact of COVID on the space industry, like for all the other industries. We have taken from one day to the next two decisions. The first one was to have all the ESA contracts being electronically signed. And this was implemented from one day to the next. We have gained a lot of time, and also in time of COVID, no paper going up and down from industry to ESA. We have gained a lot of time in efficiency. Also, we have realized that in time of COVID, the cash flow of company is quite important. And we have decided to accelerate the payment procedure. And we went down for the payment of invoices down to 12 days. This is unprecedented. And I think this is really showing how ESA was able to react from one day to the next to a very difficult situation. But that was some months ago. So what we have in front of us, the reform, I would just give a few examples. We need to be faster in the placing of our contracts, in particular the small and medium contracts. That's where we need to be faster than we are today. In a way, we need to cut the corners in the procedures. We are working on that, and that is really the aim of ESA, is to have an agency able to place a contract faster than today. We also have to adapt to a world where commercialization is more important, and you see that on the television all the time. What's happening in the US, and that is really important. And a few months ago, we have created a new directorate in ESA, and this directorate starts with the word commercialization, industry and procurement, and we are really working on that, because we think that the private sector has a larger role to play in space today than it was in the past, and this is very, very visible. Speeding up the procedure, cutting the corners, coming closer to industry. I mean, those are the key elements of the agenda. Also, a number of internal procedures will be improved, but that is less relevant for the people outside of ESA.
Okay, that's good to know. So, you can see that you're looking at a faster, perhaps a leaner set of processes as a result. But can I turn to the impact of how ESA operates, or its mandate, in the terms of Europe's role in space? Is still Europe lagging behind? There's been a lot of talk. When I interviewed the Director General of the European Space Agency over a year and a half ago, he was quite concerned and said that, if we don't ratchet up our ambition, but also the speed, we're going to lag behind Asia and the US. Are we still lagging behind? Has there been a point of more catch up? And also, what are we trying to catch up to, and why, if you like? So two questions in that.
Well, I don't like very much the expression lagging behind. I mean, in terms of Earth observation and with Copernicus, with the scientific missions of ESA, we are not lagging behind anybody. We have the best meteorological fleet in the world. It's an European. We are in terms of navigation. We have Galileo is the more precise system existing. And in terms of science, I think we are second to none with the ESA missions we are conducting in terms of science. But you have heard what I said about the summit. For example, in terms of exploration, human exploration, the budget of Europe is less than 1/10 of the budget of NASA. So you imagine the enormous difference in means and capacities. There clearly we are lagging behind, and we need to accelerate. And that was really the idea of this high-level group I just discussed a few minutes ago with you. And the idea, let's accelerate where we are lagging behind, and on the other domains, let's keep the speed we have, but let's accelerate. So you see, that is the important message. You see today, the relevance of space is increasing every day. And space that was 20, 30 years ago, a frontier or scientific activity is today part of our daily life. And nobody could imagine one day without satellite. That would be the chaos. So it is part of our daily life and more relevant. And this is why I think a meeting like the one we had last week are so important, that we put together all the possible means, being it at the level of the European Union, at the level of the European Space Agency, together to bring and to keep Europe in the first row.
Sure.
That is our common objective.
But I think it's quite telling. Thank you for that, Eric. But it's quite telling that budget sometimes matters. And when you think about the investment that you've just compared between NASA and Europe, that is really quite significant. It's like over a 90% gap, like in terms of the forward investment. But let's turn to, and that's something we may have to, as a result, pay the price for, in terms of potentially, my words, lagging behind in the future if we don't up the game in terms of both our investment in research and development, but also how we are, I suppose, managing the commercialization of space. So I want to turn finally to a couple of points in that regard. We know what, the two big billionaires are doing out there in the US, from the US, in terms of really kind of launching. The number of satellites are phenomenal. So on the one hand, we know that satellite launches have literally, just in this year, just in these past few months, have gone through the roof, and they're much higher in number than we have had even the year previously. And this is led by, let's say, Tesla and others, and Bezos. Tell us, from your perspective, what do you think are the risks that we need to manage in regard to the commercialization of space? I mean, ESA 10, 20 years ago had something like 90 registrations, if you like, of in enterprises. Now there's over 2,700, and perhaps there are going to be more. But what are the implications of that for Europe's role and Europe's infrastructure in space?
Well, last week in his speech, President Macron said, I think I will use his words, space is our common good, and it cannot become an unregulated Far West. I think that is exactly what he said in French, but I was it in English, but that is what he said. And I think he's completely right. And this is exactly what was also said last week by Commissioner Breton. This is also the aim of the accelerators, the Protect accelerators that ESA is pushing. This problem is extremely serious, the problems of debris in orbit. When you imagine that we have today around the Earth more than 36,000 debris of a size bigger than a tennis ball, you realize that the risk, and we see it with ESA satellites and with all the European satellites, the need to perform a last-minute movement of the satellite to avoid a collision, because a tennis ball is like a grenade. So the impact is the same as the one of a grenade. So you imagine for a satellite, it is the end of the satellite. And therefore, the risk is extremely high. This risk is increasing. And this is why I think it is extremely important in Europe to accelerate in those domains. So what can you do? There are aspects that are, of course, regulatory aspects that and that is really the role of the Commission, the regulatory body, and also in the frame of the United Nations, and that's where we can provide, of course, or support, or technological support, or knowledge about operations, but. There are also technological developments, I think, that are important. We have, for example, in the Make, a very interesting mission that is called Adrios, and the aim of this mission is to capture a debris and to deorbit this debris in a way to clean the orbit around the Earth. So this will be a world premiere when this mission will fly. But you see, this is element, and there are, of course, a lot of other elements in terms of technology that we can do to ensure that we keep the orbit as clean as possible. And so on one side, regulation to avoid the Far West, on the other side, the technology, new missions in order to clean and to avoid creating more debris. So we have really to work hand in hand on those two paths, the regulatory one and the technological one. And that was what was debated in the morning and in the afternoon last week in Toulouse.
Good to know, but this will mean that this will require cooperation amongst member states, I imagine, to actually do the proper thing, or the right thing, to participate in this, major exercise in terms of debris management, but also to make sure there's greater safety in space for our citizens. Turning to citizens, I've got a couple of questions for you, Eric. I have, from our Debating Europe Citizens platform, we have over 5.5 million people who interact on EU policy on a daily, weekly basis. So I have a question from Marcel. So I'm going to read this out. Marcel says, space research that serves people is always good. That's why I welcome research by private individuals who don't have war and armaments in mind, but rather people. Do you agree with Marcel? And what should more Europeans invest in space? Should they be investing more in space as a result?
Well, that is what we are proposing, and in fact, in this question you have two aspects. Of course, you need to invest more, but you need also to invest in the best possible way. I think it is extremely important that space investments are bringing the maximum benefits to the citizen. This is exactly the idea with what we do on meteorology, what we do on Earth observation with Copernicus, what we do on Galileo, offering also navigation services to all European citizens. So that for me is extremely important. And when you think about the domains we are selecting for the accelerators, we have not discussed this one yet, but the rapid and resilient crisis response. What is this all about? You have seen during the summer the number of crises generated by extreme weather conditions. You have seen forest fire, flood in Belgium, in Germany, other countries. That was extremely visible during the summer. It was every day in the news. And we are convinced that space can help, can provide more support to those on the field that are first trying to better predict those extreme events. Second, that to better monitor, have a good vision of the real impact, and then help those that are on the field trying to save lives and to avoid further negative developments. So I think so. You see, space for me is today closer to the citizens than it was, and this will really continue. What we have discussed in Toulouse, again, take secure connectivity. That is one of the objectives. Clearly, to avoid a white zone where there is no connectivity. There are subzones in Europe. Also ensure that in case of destruction of the ground infrastructure, the space infrastructure can take over immediately and help the citizen. So you see all those initiatives, I think, have one objective, is to better serve the citizens.
Okay, and I think you make some very good points, but I still maintain that, and it's not your job necessarily, but I wonder, if we were to do a survey or a poll of Europe, citizens across Europe, how many would know that, their working lives, what they do on a day-to-day basis, has a huge, consequence from as a result of investment in space. And I don't think people have that awareness that in terms of security, in terms of access to their connectivity and their privacy and data, etc., space matters in that realm. But let's go to the second question in this regard from Serena. So Serena says, it is important to go back to the basics of the once concluded treaty on space and keep it without ifs and buts. Is this currently the case in the race for space?
Well, that is, I think, an important question. And when you think about debris, I said that regulatory effort should be certainly conducted in Europe, but you cannot do that in isolation. So that is why you have the United Nations. And a debate in the United Nations is important. It is important that Europe speaks with one voice in the strongest possible way to ensure that we have really regulated use of the orbit, because at the end, this is the orbit is a common mean for humanity, and we need to keep it for all generation, but also for future generation, and that's really where regulatory efforts are so important, and this must be conducted in the international frame.
Eric, thank you very much, and a good point to end on. There are so many other topics I'd like to touch base on, especially the security dimensions of space in terms of people's livelihoods, but perhaps that's for another time and another day. But, thank you for sharing with us some of the early outcomes of the summit that happened, and being able to really explain what the consequences are of investing in space and making sure we're up there with the others, but also what the cost might be of not acting if we don't invest effectively, but also the link back to citizens in terms of how important it is for all of our lives. And I hate to think, in terms of the current situation we have in Ukraine, I can imagine the impact of space technology in providing intelligence, but actually in this unregulated space, we don't know what might happen. But I'm not going to end on that negative note, but I want to say that actually there's a number of positives from this in terms of climate change, crisis management, etc., and so forth. So thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. And for those of you who are interested in continuing engagement with this issue of making space matter, which is part of Friends of Europe's new program in partnership with the European Space Agency, what you should look out for is our space summit. It's going to be our alternative space summit in June. And I hope we can welcome some of the working group or the group of experts that have been set up and have been announced to that day, where we can actually discuss in that context. And it will be an alternative context, because we're independent, we're not of government, and we're not of any other formal institution. We're an independent think tank trying to really shake through what the issues are for space investment and development in the future. So please do keep an eye out for that, and hopefully we can welcome you back, Eric, once again later this year in that conversation. But for now, thank you for your time, and good luck in terms of how this summit and its outcomes will be taken forward, and this new department that you refer to on commercialization. And we can only hope that we do see a different tone and environment for how you, as the European Space Agency, are able to up the game for Europe. Thank you very much. For those of you who've been listening, watching, keep an eye on our website for our next episodes of Critical Thinking Live. And thank you, Eric, for joining me, and keep your distance and be safe. Thank you very much.